let's talk last Epoch 1.1 cycle. My cycle start has been actually absolutely positively fantastic. If you've seen my last video, then you know that I am playing Puncture with a bleed bow kind of setup, and I kind of been doing my own thing, and well, it has been performing, and it has been performing really, really, really well. So I wanted to make this video as an update, just kind of give you guys an idea of where I am, what's going on, how it's been. The league's been out a couple days now, close to about a week, and I've gotten a little bit of time to play. I haven't played as much as I would like, but with real life kicking my butt and stuff, I've gotten as much time as I could. I want to go over my gear, where I am, what's going on, how the build looks, what the characters got going on, and just kind of give you guys a rough idea. Currently, I'm up to part 7 of the Harbinger quest. Essentially, what you have to do is you have to go through all the different timelines. You have to kill the different Harbingers. As you progress through the corruption, you unlock new Harbingers, working your way towards the final new pinnacle boss, Aberoth. I have the Black Sun left, the Stolen Lands, Frost, Blood, Frost, and Death in the Fall of the Empire, and then I'll give it a shot at the final boss or the new pinnacle boss and see how my character truly holds up. And we'll save that fight and that update for, when I get there. But currently I'm level 95. I've been progressing really, really, really well. I've got a full setup of gear, and overall my character is doing good. I'm capped resistances. I've got 300 mana. I've got 46% movement speed. I've got a little bit of dexterity going on. My health pool can definitely be a lot better. I've got 78% bow attack speed. I'm crit avoidance capped. I've got a little bit of threshold, a little bit of damage reduction. I've got some good dodge. I can scale my dodge up, doing some really cool, neat tactics playing my character, and I can do some stuff to get like as high as 60, 70, 80% dodge, depending on the heat of the moment, what's going on. I've got Umbral blades. I've got puncture and bleeds. I've got pretty much everything going for me. Now, before we go further into the character and what's going on, we'll take a look at what an echo looks like. You see I have a fresh monolith. This is 310 corruption, and we'll just go hop right in and I'll show you what it looks like inside of maps. There are 2 ways to progress through maps, and I'm going to show you the 2 different ways to do that. And the first way to do it is the very basic standard way, where we're just going to kind of go through, stack a bunch of bleeds and dots, and kill all the mobs. The worst and hardest thing, I shouldn't even say worst, but the hardest thing about this build is the fact that stuff dies behind you and you have to go backwards to loot. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but I personally don't really mind it. I really like the playstyle of the build a lot. I like what it's doing and what it's accomplishing, and it feels overall really good to play. I like the coverage, the screen clear, and just how it essentially feels. And big tanky mobs like this guy, you shoot it a couple times, you just kind of like run away, it'll die, you don't have to worry about it, and then you go back if you see something good on your screen and you collect your loot. Overall though, echoes in themselves don't take very long. The echoes that do take a long time are, the standard arenas. Arenas take forever. Arenas are long. I don't like arenas. But the build in itself feels really good. I do have a boss showcase for this. I'm going to save that for the end of the video. So if you want to see what it looks like to tackle a 300 boss, stay tuned to the end of the video. Please, I'm trying to do stuff with my hands. Will you stop hitting me, mobs? Please, I'm trying to sell and showcase how cool this character is, and all you're doing is ruining it for me. God. But yes, if you want to see what a 300 showcase of a boss looks like with a Harbinger, that'll be at the end of the video, and we'll really get a feel for it. But you see right then and there, we go in, we've cleared a lot of stability. We've managed to do the mod, no problem. And just to kind of give you guys an idea, I'll hide my face. That last rift, it had more health, more everything. This one had, high health enemies deal increased damage. We had shred on there a second ago. That just fell off. We had increased damage. That fell off, and crit strike chance. So, the overall, it was pretty scary and a little deadly, but we went through it no problem. The build in itself, we looked at all the stats, and let's just see of where we are. Essentially, in my last video, we decided that we were going to play Puncture. We were going to pair it with Shift. We were going to pair it with Smoke Bomb and Umbral Blaze. We also had shurikens. We originally were using shurikens. Shurikens in the last video were acting as another defensive layer. And overall, through testing and the help of you guys and just kind of talking to me while we were streaming, or while I was streaming, we found that there was a better way to play it, and we just ditched the idea of shurikens altogether. Essentially, we kept the idea of Puncture and we added in Dark Quiver. Dark Quiver summons 7 black arrows that rain from the sky over 4 seconds, granting 100% increased damage to the next shot that you take, but they really tie in really well and synergize with everything that we're doing. Essentially, we were taking Dark Quiver and adding it to what we were doing, and it was giving us a ton of damage over time for our next shot. We were getting Crimson Shroud, where you're getting chance to penetrate, or physical penetration and bleed chance. We were gaining a little bit of life. We were gaining some frenzy. And the most important thing about the arrows was we were picking up and creating a shadow. So every time we picked up a black arrow, it created a shadow at the arrow's location. And lastly, we just added tons and tons of arrows to get tons and tons of shadows. The reason why this was important is the shadows were used for a couple of reasons. One, they were a defensive layer, and two, they were an extremely offensive layer. Dark Arrow paired with Umbral Blades makes for a really, really, really good offense. Now, Umbral Blades is that big spinny thing that you see. So when I do anything, or I place a shadow and I start firing and I pick up these little arrows, I leave these little Umbral Blades pretty much all over the screen. These things are like little homing missiles. They will seek out, they will find the enemy, they will kill the enemy, and they will deal tons and tons of damage. We also scale their duration and their area of effect, and essentially we give them the ability to just be a heat-seeking missile. This is all because we use the fact that whenever we create a shadow and that shadow expires, they leave behind an Umbral Blade. So, you know, an Umbral Blade that's seeking an enemy, dealing a ton of damage based on how many shadows, stacking a bunch of shadows, we get a lot of damage. We also get Dust Shroud usage. Dust Shrouds give us a lot of defenses, and we gain more damage per Dust Shroud. We also just take the ability to have our damage turn into cold, and I've been testing out this freeze on and off. You might want to remove a point from here and put a point into the freeze and chill. I've been testing different combinations. I think these freeze and chill are really good, and I would remove 2 points from here to put 2 points in the freeze and chill, and then we give them the chance to bleed. Now, Dust Shroud in itself is a huge, absolutely wonderful defensive layer, and I really, really, really enjoy using it a lot. Now, we pair everything with Smoke Bomb. Smoke Bomb is going to give us a, just a bomb of smoke at our feet. It's essentially going to just grow in duration. It's going to give us a bleed chance per Crimson Shroud. We're going to get tons of Crimson Shroud standing inside of the Smoke Bomb. We're going to get a shadow clone left behind at each second at a random location inside the smoke cloud. We're going to scale the duration and the area of our smoke cloud. We're going to give the ability to give frail to the enemy. So if you smoke bomb on top of an enemy, they're frail for a second. We're going to get Silver Shrouds, which causes us to dodge the next attack that we take. We're going to cleanse all elements on us with Smoke Shroud or Smoke Screen or Smoke Bomb or the Smoke Effect. We're going to get a little bit of health and a little bit of mana. These three together just tie in and do everything beautifully that we want. We're going to use Sprint, or Shift, I should say. Shift is going to be our movement ability. Now, Shift is really cool. Shift is going to leave a clone or a shadow where we were. It's also going to allow us to get in and out of danger. The cooldown on Shift is 3.1 seconds, so you can't always use it all the time. And during big boss fights and Harbinger fights, you really want to use Shift as a really good escape mechanic. While Shift is on cooldown, we have the dodge roll to essentially get us around. You should, if you do it right and don't panic, have access to Shift and double dodge roll. But on top of that, Shift is, giving us extra bleed chance on our next attack. It's giving us bleed duration and pen. We're getting movement speed. We're leaving a shadow. We're gaining a ton of mana back. We're invulnerable while shifting. And Shift itself is just a really good, oh God button. So use it smartly. And lastly, we are going to talk about Puncture. Puncture is the bread and butter behind what we are doing. Puncture is our big damage dealer. Puncture is how we apply all of our bleeds. Puncture is where all of the damage comes into play. And the way that we have it built here is a little bit different right now. Puncture, we have the standard. We have Perforate for bleed chance. We have Bloodthirst for more bleed chance. We have Hunger for more bleed chance. And these combination of 3 nodes stacked together give you tons and tons of bleed really, really, really fast. We take Press the Attack for Frenzy, and this key node allows us to get Mind Piercer. Mind Piercer is one of the ways that we sustain our mana. Mana on this build is a little bit rough, and this helps us a lot. We get mana on hit, and we get a ton of physical penetration for per 15 points of maximum mana. I have 300 mana currently. 15 into 300, that's a lot of mana, you know what I'm saying? That's a lot of physical penetration. We take this node for more area of effect and more damage, and we have a floating node over here. We have Efficacious Toxin for 25% chance. Pretty much this is up all of the time, period, ever. And we're taking Sanguine Obsession. We take this because of the following. This bow base gives chance to poison on bow hit, and this is the highest percent chance to get extra chance at bleed. So this bow base paired with this gives all forms of poison, becomes bleed as our main damage dealer. Now, we also take this to get Fizz Shred. We cap out on our Fizz Shred with this very, very easily. We use this to give us more damage. It reduces our attack speed a little bit, and this is our big bread and butter. Penumbral Ambush is what allows us to clear as much of the screen. Without that node, we would only be firing one line of Puncture, and it's not as good. The big problem with this node is it uses a lot of mana, and we had to scale our mana for two reasons. One, so that we can maintain firing in this node all the time and not have mana issues. Two, so that we can get a ton of physical penetration from this. And three, well, if our damage is revolved around mana and we have no mana, we do no damage. So that's why we have tons and tons of mana. I also figured that slightly at 20 mana regen is pretty much the sweet spot to maintain it, especially during longer boss encounters. I can't speak for Aberoth or the Pinnacle boss in itself because I'm not there yet, but doing up to 300 and change Harbingers hasn't been a problem. And like I said, there's a clip at the end of this that you'll be able to see how that all works out. Now, we do indeed have one floating point. You see that we have one floating point that we don't have put in. I have this point for Mutilate. Mutilate says bleed stacks are consumed, and instead of applying bleed, the greater Puncture consumes all stacks. So essentially what happens is this node says every third Puncture deals more damage in a larger area, and it just makes it so that our big Puncture consumes all of the bleed chances. So if I take this node and I go into an echo and I go to the echo, you should see a very large difference right away in terms of clear and how it handles. And you'll see that instead of the mobs bleeding out, the mobs will just get chunked and immediately die. So if we look at some of the bigger mobs, you can see right away, they just immediately disappear. We're a little squishy, forgive the death. We're a little squishy, forgive the death, but that's what you get for standing still trying to showcase the explosions. Let's just go back in and we'll try to showcase it a little bit more, even though we died. You definitely, with this build, want to be running. You definitely want to be gunning. You definitely want to be, see, there it was. There's the big explosion. And you definitely don't want to stand still at any point. And there you go. See, right there. Beautiful. You didn't have to wait on the bleed. All the damage just happens at once. The big problem with this Mutilate node, or this node, is it's really good for mapping or echoing. It's really, really good for echoing and clearing and fast clearing. It's not very good for bossing. So when I'm doing bossing, I have this node hanging just like this. And because we have 24 points into Puncture, having this node hanging is not that bad. If you don't want to spec in and spec out and you just rather be in a bossing stance, put that points in the Rapid Strike. Rapid Strike's pretty sweet. You can also like move some points out of here and put them in the Rapid Strike, but this has just been out of this world. Now, in terms of passives and stuff, I currently have 3 points into here, which I'm going to probably change up a little bit. I'm using this node specifically to get the Disembowel for 5 points here. I have a couple points in the dodge rating and glancing blows. I'm probably actually going to take 2 points out of here and put them into here to get more dodge rating and glancing blows. We have dex and health here. We have dodge rating, damage taken while moving is reduced, and we have more damage. So increased damage per 1% of increased movement speed. So stacking movement speed gives us a bunch of damage. Inside of Blade Dancer, we take glancing blows and dexterity. And inside of Falconer, we have dodge rating, health, dodge rating, maximum health gains its endurance threshold. And the last 6 points that I'm going to be using while leveling, I'm going to be putting into this for increased dodge rating and mana regen. I'm going to be removing a point out of here, and I'm going to be putting into this to get the 6 points. I'm going to be testing this out in terms of dodge rating and mana regen. This currently seems like a really good idea, especially with how often we're dodging to gain mana back to consumer mana. Mana, like I said, is not too much of a problem. I'm mostly worried about Aberoth and having the mana to do that fight. So if I don't need this for that fight, I'll get rid of it. If I do, I'll take it. But if you don't need these last 6 points, then put the points, 3 points here, 2 points there, and keep everything rolling. In terms of Marksman, we're going to take a bunch of bow attack speed and health gained. We're going to take enough points here to gain the haste after evading. We don't need any of these because we're crit avoidance capped on gear. We're going to take this for more damage with concentration, more damage over time here, dodge rating, and we're going to take this for less hit damage taken with concentration. Concentration also gives us movement speed. 1 point here so that we can get Arrow Storm. Arrow Storm gives us 10% increased bow and attack speed. You could put more points into here for more bow attack speed if you so choose to. We take 1 point here for Silver Shroud. Silver Shroud's a buff that gives you a 100% chance to dodge the next hit. Dodging with Silver Shroud consumes, gives you 100 ward per stack. So if you get a bunch of Silver Shroud stacks, you just use this and you're pretty much golden. We get increased physical damage and Fizz Shred here. This node is absolutely bonkers, and it is a ton of free damage. And lastly, we get increased mana regen, and bow mana cost is equal to damage. And well, we get 100% more damage because our bow skills cost 15 mana. So overall, the passive tree, pretty straightforward. There's a lot of wiggle room and a lot of things you can be doing. If your gear sucks and you don't have crit avoidance, you could take out nodes from here. From these three up here, you'll lose a little bit of damage, but you can put the points right into here to get yourself heightened senses. Overall, my gear in itself is pretty good. It could definitely be better. I definitely need to work on LP and getting better pieces of gear, but overall, my gear in itself is pretty good. Here, my bow is tier 6 damage over time, tier 5 speed, tier 5 bleed, and poison pen. The poison pen does nothing. I just got really unlucky trying to get the poison pen to go off, and it didn't go off, and everything broke, and I ran out of forging potential. But this is my bow for now. I'm going to be looking for a new bow in the future, but overall, this bow does the job. My helmet is absolutely beautiful. It gives me all of the poison resistance that I need to cover my character. I get bleed duration, damage over time, +4 puncture, mana, and health. My amulet for physical and necrotic resistance, tons of damage over time, tons of mana regen, avoid resistance, health, and a little bit of poison resistance. The body armor, dodge, rating, damage over time, fizz with puncture, mana, health, and overall, I could probably get a better armor. I would like to get a better armor. My big issue with my armor right now is I think I want to get physical pen with puncture to be higher. I would like to have the tier 5 health, but we get what we get and we roll with it. Ideally, exalted health would have been better, but there wasn't one on the marketplace, so I just kind of roll with what I have. We have a ring that's necrotic resistance to help us cap out our necrotic resistance. We get increased mana regeneration, damage over time, lightning resistance, critical avoidance, and I got increased physical damage as a fracture. I had physical damage on it, or sealed, I should say. I had physical damage on it. I sealed it for damage over time because that's the better modifier and the multiplier. But overall, this ring is absolutely beautiful. This ring single-handedly covers all of our lightning resistance. So until we get a blessing, this is the ring. Our belt, physical damage, mana regen, critical strike avoidance, LE resistance. If I take this belt off, we are missing resistances. So this belt is beautiful. And the critical strike avoidance, absolutely top tier. And my last ring is mana regen, damage over time, critical strike avoidance, and LE resistance. This plus this plus this gives me all of the critical strike avoidance that I need to not worry about the critical strike blessing and to not worry about having it on the tree, and frees up my ability to have a little bit more wiggle room on my character with what I want to do. As far as uniques go, Twitch chat and YouTube chat recommended, or YouTube chat recommended Phase Point. Phase Point, this quiver has been out of this world. It gives us tons and tons and tons of dodge rating. We get a Dust Shroud on dodge. We get a Black Arrow on dodge. We get void damage per Dust Shroud when using a Black Arrow. So we get a little extra void damage, but overall, it just gives us a dodge on dodge on dodge and Dust Shrouds. And Dust Shrouds are really good. And we get Black Arrows on dodging. So right now, before we do anything, we're at 25% dodge. So 1 in 4 attacks we currently dodge. We can get our dodge rating up to like 75-ish, 70% when we're playing and we're like in the heat of the moment and we're in our smoke bombs and we're picking up our Black Arrows. We can like really just kind of like get our dodge rating up really high. And, you know, as fast as you do things. And you pretty much always have Black Arrows because you're in the heat of the moment. You're dodging, you're doing this, you're picking up arrows, you're shooting. And an overall fantastic quiver. I put this in the Nemesis mechanic and it popped out with bow attack speed. And I was just like, well, I win, game over. You got it. Our gloves are really good. Our gloves give us bleed duration, poison duration. We're not too worried about the poison duration. We do want them to have good bleed duration. They come with damage over time, crit multi, fizz, and poison resistance. And it says critical strike multipliers converted to physical penetration with bleed. So any crit multi that we have just becomes physical pen. So these gloves are just like tons and tons of damage. I once again put these into the Nemesis mechanic. They popped out with ward on potion use. I just shrugged and said, all right, we'll fix them later. What I want on them, I'm not honestly too sure. I'm probably just going to wait until I level up a bit more with Merchant's Guild and I can buy the uniques with LP, see what's available to buy with LP, and then just kind of go slam and see what I get and figure it out later. Our boots, same thing. Our boots give us movement speed, bleed duration, physical ailment damage to moving enemies, dex strength, and int. These boots are cracked. They just give you a flat 38% movement speed. I would like to have them with more movement speed. I put them in the Nemesis mechanic. They did not get movement speed. I'm fully planning on getting them with LP and slamming on movement speed because more movement speed is more damage. Dex is really good for our character as Dex gives us everything that we want, including dodge rating. So ideally, I would get a 2 LP pair and just slam on like Dex and movement speed, Dex and something, Dex and health, Dex and movement speed, Dex, movement speed, movement speed, movement speed. And then our Chalice. This thing is insane. This thing gives you damage reflects, which are kind of like whatever, but it gives you a chance to bleed duration, and physical damage over time leashes health. This is your big sustaining point. This thing is cracked. It is crazy. It is super strong. It is like the thing that will let you sustain and keep you in the fight. Without this, I feel like the whole build would fall apart and have just no sustain at all. This thing has saved my butt more times than I ever want to openly admit, and it is an absolute must-have. You need it. You have to get it. You can't play the build without it. Well, I mean, you can, but it's going to feel bad. This thing is great. Absolutely great. And once again, I threw it in the Nemesis mechanic. It shot out with necrotic damage, which doesn't do anything. Cold resistance, which was really nice considering the fact that we're 143% over cold resistance. And once again, once I level up and get some Merchant's Guild, I'll get it with LP, and I'll figure out what I want on it. But that's the gear in itself. My idols aren't great. This one's just damage over time. This one's bow attack speed, bleed. This one's bleed and bleed. This is void resist. This is damage over time, necrotic. This one's damage over time, void. This one's poison on hit, which scales with puncture, which is fine, and void. And this one's bleed on hit and fizz. I'm going to fix these up later. I haven't really spent a whole lot of time on these, but this is where I'm at right now. And overall, like I said, the character in itself feels really good. I have that clip coming up for you in just a second about how it does bosses and how it's feeling. And the only thing that has given me a hard time was I did Ending the Storm, which is everybody's favorite boss, Lagan. Doing the Lagan fight on that small platform. Yeah, you could cheese Lagan and you hide on the steps in the top left. Great, that's fine. But fighting the Harbinger in 200 corruption kind of sucked. It has been the worst one, but everything else has been pretty good. And it wasn't even Lagan that was the hard part. It was the Harbinger on the tiny ledge. But otherwise, the build feels great. I'm really happy with the build and where it's progressing and how it's turning out. And overall, I'm thrilled out of my mind. And I just wanted to get this update out to you guys and let you know what's going on, how I am, and what's, pretty much how it's cooking. As far as updates for the rest of the build goes and how it does with Aberoth, after I kill Aberoth this week, I will post another video update on how the build is, where it ended up, what the gear looks like, and then we'll go from there. But for now, friends, I'm gonna get this video out to you guys, and I appreciate all the bits, all the subs, all the people hanging out, all the new subscribers to the channel, all the people that hang out inside the YouTube. You guys are great. And if you've made it this far in the video, I truly appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And if you want to get more updates in real time, please, by all means, join the Discord. It's the best way to interact with the community, and it's the best way to see all the updates coming to the videos and pretty much everything that's going on. But like I said, for now, friends, let me get this video to you guys, and I'll see you all later.
Not happening.